Welcome to today's edition of Golden Moments and Memories. This is a video series that we've been doing particularly during the 150th anniversary or sesquicentennial of the University of North Georgia. It is sponsored by the University of North Georgia Alumni Association in conjunction with the North Georgia Choral Cadets Association, the Women of North Georgia, and the Young Alumni. It is a program that is designed to help all of us understand the history of the university and some of the people, some of the icons that have been a part of the history. And today I'm very excited that we have Dr. Martha Nesbitt. Dr. Nesbitt was the longtime president of Gainesville State, about 15 years, and we're going to spend a few minutes just finding out a little bit about herself, and then find out more about Gainesville State and the Oconee Campus, as well as the Oakwood Campus, and give you an opportunity to understand the culture and the legacy that Gainesville State brings to the University of North Georgia. So welcome, Dr. Nesbitt. We appreciate you coming and being with us today. Why don't we start with you just giving us a little bit of background about yourself? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? That kind of stuff, and we'll take it from there.
Well, believe it or not, I'm an Atlanta native, and I went to Southwest High School, which no longer exists. It's now Benjamin Mays Middle School. But from there, I went to Duke and received my bachelor's degree and my master's of arts in teaching. Came back to Atlanta and taught high school for a year. And by the way, as a background, when I was growing up, basically there were 3 careers available for women: teaching, nursing, and secretaries.
Okay.
And actually one of my classmates at Duke, after she got her bachelor's degree, went back to secretarial school and became an executive assistant. So,
well, let me ask you, which high school did you teach at?
Brown High School.
Brown High School, out east.
In the West End in Atlanta. In fact, it was a rival high school to where I went to school.
Right.
And the kids were always teasing me about that.
So you're a Duke Blue Devil.
Right.
Okay.
After teaching a year at Brown, I was on a year's appointment at Emory University. But that summer, I met my to-be husband up in Indiana, and we got married in December, so I resigned. We were on the quarter system then.
Right.
So I resigned from that and moved to Indiana, where I taught high school for a year and a half before we started our family. Breaking down a little bit, I wanted to go back and receive my doctorate, and we had the occasion to live in Milwaukee, and I started in at Marquette. But then my husband was transferred back to Atlanta, and everybody thought I had something to do with it, but I really didn't. But then I enrolled at Georgia State, received my PhD there, and as I was finishing up my dissertation, I was employed at DeKalb Community College.
Sure.
And I spent, over about 20 years there, and moved from faculty into administration, and was in 1983 appointed Vice President for Academic Affairs. In 1986, DeKalb Community College became part of the university system.
Right.
It had been under the DeKalb Board of Education, the only college so established in the state. And so we went through a real transition of moving from being under county control to being under the Board of Regents. In 1994, the president who hired me retired, and the Board of Regents had sort of dragged their feet, and they didn't have anybody to put in there, so they were looking for an interim president, and I was named as interim president. At that time, the university system had a policy that interim presidents could never become a president. But that was okay with me, because I had been at DeKalb long enough to know that they were going to hire an outsider anyway. The last 3 presidents had been all insiders.
Was this the Clarkston campus that you were?
Actually, no. We had a district office that was on the South Campus.
Right.
But you had South Campus, Clarkston Campus, North Campus, and Dunwoody, and I was on opening administration for the Dunwoody
Dunwoody
campus.
campus.
And then we had one out in Conyers. And then eventually up in Gwinnett County, and definitely multi-campus.
Yes.
So I served as interim president from 95 to 96, and or almost 96, and then went back to being vice president for academic affairs. In the late summer of, I have to think about this, 1996, the Chancellor Stephen Porch at the time, asked me to come down and be his executive assistant for a year. It's a year appointment. Well, while I was there, Foster Watkins, who was the second president at Gainesville College, left, and I threw my hat in the ring. And I was very fortunate. That spring I really had two options. Either I could be chosen president, or the chancellor had said, if that doesn't work out, we'd like for you to stay. So fortunately, they chose me as president. I really felt like I had won the Emmy, because I had taken faculty and administrators up to Gainesville to see some of the programs that were outstanding, including our physics program and our supportive learning program through our ACT Center, Academic Computing, Tutoring, and Testing Center. So I started in August of 1997 at Gainesville, and the very next year we converted to semesters.
Nice.
So we had challenges right off the bat, but I inherited a really healthy institution, and I'd like to just give a couple of minutes to the history. The institution was founded in 1964, and the first president was Hugh Mills, who happened to be an alum of North Georgia.
Basketball.
Right. And he knew that he had two things to do to really make Gainesville Junior College at the time a success. Number one, he had to provide the kind of support for students whose families had never been to college, because that was the purpose of establishing these two-year colleges around the state, was to provide more opportunity for higher education. But at the same time, he knew that we need to have strong academic programs, because he knew that the majority of students would either transfer to North Georgia or to the University of Georgia, and if they didn't do well, then that would reflect on the institution, and it wouldn't be considered a viable option for many students. And so we from the very beginning had a very strong academic support system, but strong academic standards. And our students who went on many times outscored the native students at the institutions where they transferred. So that was what I inherited. It was a faculty that really focused on student success. And also in doing that, of course, we had to keep our classes small, because
Right.
students without much experience in college or with families, they don't do too well in 200 and 300 class size classes. So anyway, that's how I got to Gainesville.
Wow. And you ended up staying, I think you said 15 years there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. The reputation of the school, I recall, was very strong even back, I guess, in the 70s. I guess when I was beginning to
right,
remember
and that's
hear
when
about it.
Hugh Mills was still there. Foster Watkins became the second president in '83, and then I was in '97.
Okay. Well, how many students were there when you first got there?
When the fall of '97, we had somewhat over 2,800 students.
Okay.
When we merged with the University of North Georgia, we had about 8,500 students, but
Wow.
that included our Oconee Campus, which was added in 2003. We started offering classes in Athens in 2001 in a rented building on Millage Avenue,
Right.
and it just blossomed. And then we were very fortunate that Truett McConnell had they called it their Watkinsville campus, and they were trying to sell it because they were in financial difficulty and they were going to hone in on their home campus. And so the Board of Regents arranged for that sale, or arranged for us to have a loan, which we had to pay off, which was fine, because that campus filled up very rapidly and has been at capacity now for probably 15 years.
Yeah, I was down there last year, I guess, and talked to the folks and was just amazed at the occupancy rate that they used the facilities. It was in the high 98% or something like that.
Right.
The building was always in use.
Right. Well, before we got the Nesbitt building on the Gainesville campus, our institution was the most heavily used institution in the state, in the sense that afternoon classes were full all the way through, whereas at the University of Georgia, and I can't really speak to North Georgia on this one, but you know, nobody had classes in the afternoon. They had all their classes in the morning. We had classes starting early morning through afternoon and into the evening, and really high usage of our facilities.
But we'll talk a little bit about, from the academic perspective, how many majors, how many different degrees were you offering in those days, and how did that grow over the years?
Well, we offered almost every 2-year program that would lead to a 4-year program someplace else. I mean, we had an agreement with Georgia Tech, for example, that students could take pre-engineering courses with us, go and just transfer seamlessly down to Georgia Tech. We had business has always been a strong program, and in that arena, Gainesville and North Georgia had a long collaboration whereby the students could take 2 years of business on our campus, and then they could take the 3rd and 4th year on our campus, but the classes were provided by North Georgia because we weren't a 4-year institution.
Right.
We became a 4-year institution in 2004.
Okay.
But we had select baccalaureate degrees. We were not a comprehensive, which we are now because it's part of the University of North Georgia. The North Georgia also offered the first 2 years of nursing on our campus. And so there's been a long collaboration between the two institutions before the merger took place.
Right. There's also adjacent was the Lanier Tech campus. How did that come about, and how did y'all interact, if all, with them?
Oh yes, we had a good collaboration with them as well. When the state legislature decided to create the 2-year colleges, they also decided to create technical colleges, and they made a conscious decision to make them separate. In many states, they were together and called community colleges, but here they kept them separate, but they encouraged collaboration. So students who took classes at Lanier Tech, where they needed some liberal arts classes to round out their 2-year degree at Lanier Tech, they would take them at Gainesville. And so we had a good working relationship with them. Fast forward now, Lanier Tech, which was right at the back of our campus, was landlocked, and it couldn't grow, and there's been a lot of demand in Northeast Georgia for more technical education. So when Nathan Deal was governor, they were able to get permission to build a new campus out on 365 north of Gainesville. Well, the nice thing about that was then Lanier Tech, the state gave Lanier Tech to the university system. So Gainesville Campus now includes both of those previous campuses. And the transformation when the Gainesville Campus went in after they got the old Lanier Tech, transformation is amazing. It's allowed us to double the size of our nursing program, move other programs over there to free up space, because the Gainesville campus has continued to grow.
Sure. Now, I'm a little hazy on this part, but I recall you had also some kind of collaboration, at least in the arts, with Bernal. Is that right? Oh,
absolutely. That's one of the real shining stars. It's called the Gainesville Theater Alliance, and it's back in the late 70s. The two institutions combined their theater programs. Theater programs, as you know, are very expensive.
Right.
And so it's a unique collaboration between a public and a private institution. And that's another program that continued to flourish all through the years. When I became president, I think we had 28 majors. When I left, we had over 150 between the two institutions. And in the year 2000, the American Council on Education gave us one of 8 national awards. That's the GTA now, the Gainesville Theater Alliance, for academic excellence and cost management. And Jack Bird, who was president of Brenau at the time, and Jim Hammond, who was director of GTA, and I went to Washington to receive this award, and we were in tall cotton. The other schools were big schools like the University of Michigan, the University of Massachusetts, even the California state system. We were the smallest of the collaborations, and we were the only one where a public and a private had collaborated together. And that has provided truly professional, even though it's a university program, professional theater for Northeast Georgia.
Yeah, well, I understand it continues to
Yes.
be a real shining star. There was also an event during the summer where you do the fireworks?
Oh yeah, right. We used to do that in around July 4th. We usually did it in late June, and the Alumni Association actually put that on, and everyone in the community was invited, and it really has become a big event that people look forward to.
Yeah. Well, as you reflect on, because you've been retired now, what?
10 years.
10 years. As you reflect on your time there, what do you think, from your perspective? What are the things you're the most proud of that happened during your tenure?
Well, obviously, creating the Oconee Campus was one of them. Another one was becoming a state college, where we offered the select baccalaureate degrees. And
Right.
the third one was we were the first institution in the university system to go smoke-free.
I read that.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How did that happen? Was that your initiative?
Well, it was, but it took a lot of teamwork to get that done. But we had done some surveys, and actually a majority of the faculty favored no smoking. Students were just, kind of half and half. But we decided to do it because we felt like we're teaching people how to use their mental facilities. We also required a wellness course, and smoking is not good for your health. So we began in January, and I believe it was 2004. Don't hold me to that, but that's about the time frame. And we began to meet with student groups. We met with faculty groups, and we got feedback and so forth. And then we announced around March 1st, I believe it was, that beginning in the summer, we would become smoke-free. And of course that was, I think, a smart thing to do because we don't have as many students on campus during the summer, and it would be easier to patrol. Now, there was some kickback. There were some students who said, "You think you're going to keep us from smoking?" But when it happened, there was very little resistance. And, it just kind of reminded me of when you walk into a restaurant and if it says no smoking, you don't smoke.
Right. Sure.
And so, anyway, I was very proud. In fact, CNN came down and interviewed us for national television for being smoke-free.
Wow.
And then, of course, later, and it was about 8 or 9 years later, the whole system became smoke-free.
Smoke-free, sure. Well, you mentioned the first Oconee, and you gave us a little history about the Truett McConnell stuff, but what were some of the challenges of putting together and having a remote campus from your administration perspective?
Well, for starters, it's very important that they have strong administrators on that campus. And so one of our vice presidents was the head of that campus,
Okay.
and had day-to-day operational authority. That person, of course, was on the president's council. So at first it was a he, and then she answered to me. And so we kept things in sync that way. And also that person it was very important for that vice president to coordinate with the other vice presidents, academic and student services. And one of the things about having multi-campuses, and this I learned when I was at DeKalb, is that you can have different kinds or different foci in student services depending on the needs of the campus. The academic standards need to be absolutely the same.
Right.
because I remember one time when I was at DeKalb, Georgia State would take an accounting course from one campus and wouldn't take it from another. Well, we had to deal with that because you can't have that.
Sure.
And so, of course, that's not been a problem for us because from the outset we said, you know, the academic standards will be the same. You can focus on which student services are most important to your students.
Right. Well, this is I hope is not a topic that would be an issue here, but explain to us a little bit more about the athletic programs that go on there by comparison to varsity sports, and how do you handle that, and how have they done on the
Well,
campus?
in the beginning, Gainesville Junior College was a member of the Junior College, whatever it's called, the National Organization for Junior Colleges, and we had a strong basketball team and a strong golf team. Now, I don't know too much. We never had a football team.
Right.
But then, when Hugh Mills was president, there were just a lot of problems with providing housing for students because we were a commuter institution.
Sure.
And off-campus housing there wasn't a lot of oversight, and there was some problems. Also, there was a lot of money going in, and very frankly, we live in bulldog country down in Gainesville. And people, they gyrate to the University of Georgia. They didn't come out for the games. I mean, the only people at the games are maybe the parents of the players
Right.
and the faculty and staff. And so Hugh Mills began to take off sort of one at a time. It was kind of gradual. And then Foster Watkins, the second president, finally got rid of the men's basketball. That was the last one. And he took a lot of flack for that. But Foster had played Georgia Tech, football at Georgia Tech. And so he is marked that he was against athletics at all. And we weathered the storm. And in fact, one of the things that we did with that money, they did, because it was before I came, was they divided it up, that had gone into athletics, between need-based scholarships and GTA scholarships. Because students who are in the theater program really don't have the time to have jobs on the outside, whereas many of our other students had at least part-time jobs. And so it went for scholarships for GTA. And then the third part of what they created a strong intramural program so that we had club sports.
Right.
And that's what we maintained. And the minute I became president, people were knocking on my door. Don't you think we need to get back into athletics? And I said no, because I had been at DeKalb, and especially when I served as interim president, I saw how much money and attention went to the athletic programs that, again, didn't really matter to the communities.
Right. Well, you mentioned communities, and we've talked about Bernal, and obviously I think the Gainesville campus is actually located in Oakwood. Is that right?
But we always called it our Gainesville Campus.
But my question is, what other kind of community involvements were there during that period of time with other institutions or other groups within the Gainesville area? I assume that chambers of commerce and people like that would have been very supportive, but is there anything else that stands out that I might have overlooked?
Well, I mentioned the collaboration with Georgia Tech. It was the Regents Engineering Transfer Program. That was very important. In fact, one of our most outstanding students we ever had was a Cuban young man who went through our institution, was named one of the top 25 community college students in the country.
Wow.
Back in 2009, and went on to Georgia Tech, made all A's for a bachelor's degree, all A's for a master's degree, and now he's in the computer world out in Washington State. But anyway, so that was a very important program for us. And again, because of the nursing that North Georgia provided and the last 2 years of the business degree that North Georgia provided. And as president of Gainesville, we were automatically on the Greater Hall Chamber of Commerce Board.
Okay.
And so that was very important because it gave me an opportunity to keep the chamber involved about what was going on at the college. And I became very involved in the community because I just thought it was important for Gainesville, the college, to be seen as benefiting the community in many ways.
Sure, sure. Well, I read something that you were heavily involved with the all of the multitudes of organizations. Have you been able to continue any of that in retirement?
I did. Now, in terms of my more national or regional involvement, even after I retired, I chaired 2 Southern Association teams to visit other colleges. Right. But after you're retired for 2 years, they won't ask you anymore, which is okay, because that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I was very involved in the American Association for Women in Community Colleges. In fact, served as its president for 2 years. And that, of course, I kept some of the friendships, but I wasn't involved anymore.
Right.
But locally, I was still on the hospital board. I became a member of the board of Lakeview Academy, which is an independent school in Gainesville. And I was on the board of Alachi Nature Science Center, which is another organization that actually is in Oakwood. And there's been long collaboration. We did a lot of work helping them map out their acreage and so forth. And there's always been someone from the college, at least one, maybe sometimes more, on their board. And so I had those 3 boards, and that really allowed me to ease into retirement without just nothing to do. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm now off of those boards because they all have term limits.
Sure.
And so now I'm simply on did I mention the Northeast Georgia Health System?
No.
That was the most important board that I think I have ever served on outside of education, because I learned so much. And I really enjoyed that. So when my term limit came there, they asked me if I would remain on one of their committees. And I'm on the Audit and Compliance Committee. I don't do much with the audit. They have a separate kind of subcommittee. But compliance, anybody in higher education has to be familiar with that because of Southern Association. You comply with this. And as our person at the college said, if SACS comes in and asks if you comply with something, if it's not written down, it's not compliance. And it has to be followed through on. But,
Sure. Well, that's great to hear that you continue to do that. There was also some kind of collaboration or association with the folks in Forsyth County too, wasn't there?
Oh yes, we really struggled with Forsyth because they wanted us over there, and we would go over, but we only had places to offer classes at night, and that was really limiting. And we would offer them for a couple of years, and then the classes would kind of dry up. And then the year before I retired, and a year and a half, I guess, before the merger, we collaborated with North Georgia to go down together and to build a building so that we could offer classes during the day and the evening. And of course, that has continued to grow, and I understand a new building is in the works.
That's my understanding too, that they're proposing for that. And actually, that was the first time you and I met. You probably don't remember that, but I was running the MBA program for North Georgia, and we were in the City Hall, but the Chamber of Commerce had put together some kind of a committee about the stakeholders of education in Forsyth County, and you were there, and as well as the Forsyth County
I remember that,
Board of Education and the Lanier Tech folks and the Pine Tree Academy, all over there. So I knew there'd been a history. I just wasn't sure.
Right.
How,
but it really took a major commitment, and by the county, to really give us space initially at City Hall that we could do, but then eventually to get a building, and it's worked out really well.
Well, that is Forsyth County, but as I recall, the actual facility and everything was a donation of the property by an anonymous donor to the city of Cumming, and Cumming actually was the one of the folks that we work with closely. Obviously, the Forsyth County schools are great, and Buster Evans was there. Well, we've talked a a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You mentioned early on about family. Anything you want to share about kids, grandkids, whatever that would be appropriate here?
We have 2 children, a son who has 2 children and his wife. They live in Bozeman, Montana.
Oh, wow.
And they recently visited us, and I'm sorry they're so far away, but they love Montana, and I don't think we'd ever get them back here. We have a daughter who lives part of the year in Pennsylvania and part of the year in Vero Beach, Florida, which got hit this morning with a hurricane. But we talked to her, and she said it was really light, and it wasn't what they expected, which was good. But they only my Montana family has 2 children, both of whom are at Montana State, and Ann, our daughter, has 1 child who is out of college. He's a construction engineer, and he and his wife just had our first great grandchild.
That's great. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Well, we talked about the fact that you were there at Gainesville State for about 15 years, and you've now been retired for 10. And that happened at approximately the same time that the merger came together. Anything that you would like to share about the merger and how that came about, and what has transpired as a result of all that?
Well, the merger was announced in December of 2011. I had announced my retirement in August, before the Board of Regents was even talking about mergers.
Okay.
So I must say I was really surprised. I really was, because we were the 8th largest institution in the system. And I know there were some little colleges in South Georgia that were really struggling. We weren't struggling, certainly. But I worked with Dr. Jacobs that last semester that I was president, and we had a committee, and we got together, and they're the ones that came up with the University of North Georgia name.
Right.
And so actually I retired in June 30th of 2012. The official merger didn't take place until January of 2013. That's when the Board of Regents had to approve it. And it has turned out to be a godsend in many ways for the Gainesville campus, because North Georgia administrators were able to get more money than I ever could out of the Board of Regents. And they built a new road and gotten the money to renovate the old Lanier Tech campus. And because the campus was now part of the University of North Georgia, it is now comprehensive in terms of offering almost every bachelor's degree you could imagine.
Right.
And so it's going to continue to flourish. I know that we've taken some hits lately because of enrollment that's dropped everywhere.
Sure.
But
well, it as I recall, and as an alum of North Georgia, we were all just a little not sure how's this all going to work out.
Right.
And it certainly has worked out beautifully, and I think it probably should be held up as a model somewhere about how these things can work out and how positive they can be.
Well, Richard Oates, who just recently retired as Vice President of the regional campuses, but located at Gainesville, was asked by the regents to go down and help some of the other colleges that were working on the consolidation. Yeah, we had probably the smoothest merger of any of them.
Yeah, that was kind of my understanding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, it's been a great journey since 1964. Is that when you said that Gainesville State first came out, as I recall, and 1873 for the university. But they've obviously done the reputation of the combined entity and the legacy that I think is going to last for years. And one of the things that have been impressive to me as I've gone to all 5 campuses is the unity of all the campuses. They all feel a part of this one university and have the same kind of values and ethics and so forth.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up completely today, and it's been just been a delight for me to have the opportunity to sit and chat with you. I've been asking you all the questions. Is there anything that you'd like to share with everybody that we haven't talked about? Anything at all you'd like to say?
Well, there is one. Back in 2004, the head of our foundation office and I got together and said, you know, we need to do something to thank the women in Gainesville for their support of the college. Many of their husbands had made major donations and they were all honored, but you know, it's two.
I understand.
And so we started a lunch, which we had at our country club, Chattahoochee Country Club, to thank women for their support of the college, and just an appreciation lunch. And after, we would always have at least one student come in and talk about the importance of scholarships. And we had a jazz band at the time, which was just superb, and they would always perform. Well, after about 2 years, a couple of people in the community said, you know, this is a wonderful event. Why don't we use it to raise more money for women's scholarships? And so it then came just a combination of appreciation and, you know, a fundraiser.
Right.
And when I retired, fortunately, from as far as my concerned, the women of North Georgia decided they wanted to continue that. And we are now in the planning, we've already planned it actually. We've already sent out the invitations for this year. It's going to be December the 1st. And it has continued to grow. And because there was money in the till for the scholarships, we have a separate fund in the University of North Georgia Foundation, which is the Women's Scholarship Fund. And a woman who was an alum of North Georgia gave a major gift to that about 5 years ago. So it's really continued to grow. And I just am so grateful that the women of North Georgia really stepped up to the plate to continue that, because it is a way to keep the Gainesville community really involved with the college,
Sure.
with the university.
Well, as a side note, my wife has attended that luncheon several times, and she always comes home just bubbling and inspired, and particularly the speakers where students have shared. So
Right.
congratulations on starting that. It's something that has continued on.
Well, thank you.
Anything else that you'd like to share before we?
I can't think of anything.
Well, we really appreciate you coming and kind of a rainy, drizzly day to come to Dahlonega. But it's just been a pleasure, and I know that the folks that'll be watching this can have a deep appreciation, not only of you personally, but also of the of Gainesville State and Oconee and all the stuff that led up to that. So thank you so much for coming. It's just been a delight. Thank you, ma'am.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay.